I think one of the first real indications that my wife had a serious problem, and I realized it was bigger than just myself and the two of us, was when she got her first DUI. It was a very dramatic experience, and I can really remember like it was yesterday. My car had broken down. I was an outside sales rep. I had an insurance brokerage, and we did a million miles. I can't remember what happened to the car, but I had it towed to the dealership, and I called her up to come pick me up, and it was about 45 minutes away. And it was only like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I remember calling her up, and she didn't sound quite right, but you know what? I didn't care. I needed somebody to come pick me up so I could, get back home and start making phone calls again and carry on with my day. And I thought the least she could do was pick me up in the middle of the afternoon. Well, she said she would be on her way, and I waited. And it was about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and by 6 o'clock, an hour later, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, I kept calling and got no answer, no response, didn't pick up the phone. I left message after message, and I was starting to get extremely stressed out. And eventually I walked down the street, got something to eat for dinner. By 8 o'clock, she still hadn't showed up, and there was no phone call. And I realized something terrible had happened. At this point, I had no idea. But I kept calling, and then I realized that, by then it was the sun was going down. I was not in the greatest part of town, as the dealership was in another town called Corona, right in Corona, Norco, in that area, not one of the best areas at night. And I was starting to get nervous because the dealership was closed at this point. So I was standing in front of the dealership, and I waited another hour and a half, and I really didn't know what to do. At one point, I was going to walk back to our corporate office, which was about a mile away, and I had a way to get in. I was like, maybe I was asleep in the office. And then I called my son. At the time, he was only about 13, 14 years old, and he was getting scared because now he was home alone. And I said, has Mom been around? He goes, no, I haven't seen her all day. So I either figured she had gotten in an accident or something horrible had happened. At this point, she had never had a DUI, but I had no idea. And believe it or not, by 10 o'clock, I don't know why I still waited and hoped that she would show up. But by then I'd left, 20 messages, and it was just really an exercise in futility. So I ended up calling one of our good friends that lived around the corner, and I actually had my son Griffin walk up the street, and he stayed with them because he was getting scared. By 10 o'clock, he was home alone in a dark house. He was old enough to be by himself, but he was getting uncomfortable, and I was getting pretty furious about the whole situation because we hadn't heard from my wife all day. So eventually, I had my friend come get me. He worked all day too, and he had to drive 45 minutes to come get me, and another 45 minutes home. At 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And I ended up getting home about midnight, and there was no one home. I think what the scariest thing, for family members is just the not knowing what happened. You can assume maybe there was an accident, but there were no accidents, reported. And I looked at police reports. You can do that online. Found nothing. But one thing I did notice is that there was a checkpoint about, maybe a mile from our house, 3/4 of a mile from our house, a DUI checkpoint. I didn't really think of it at the time, but I realized, maybe that might have been the problem. And the next day I actually went to sleep that night. I'd had enough. By 1 o'clock in the morning, I was exhausted, frustrated, very, very concerned. But I said, there's nothing I can do at this point. And 7:30 the next morning, the phone rang, my cell phone, and I picked it up, and obviously it was Amanda, and she said that she had had a DUI, and I was like, are you kidding me? Where, when? At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, you were drunk enough to get pulled over? And she goes, yes, let's talk about it when I get home. I don't feel very well. And I'm like, so now I'm going to go run over and get you? Really? It was just the insanity of it all was really the first big indication of what was to follow, really, for the last 6 years of her life. And from there, I quickly went over to get her because I really wanted to see what she had to say more than anything. When I picked her up, she was sitting on the front bench and her head was down, and I could tell she was just very hungover. I mean, her face was all red. She was going through some definitely hormonal issues because she had thyroid problems. And it was just a horrible sight to see. And I got her to come in, and she just said, "I got caught. They got me." I'm like, "Well, why were you drunk at 1 o'clock in the afternoon?" I'm like, what is going on with you? I mean, and I realized that this was probably her daily activity at this point. I just wasn't privy to it all the time because I wasn't home that much. And I realized at this point, this is when we put her in shortly thereafter, her first rehabilitation facility, her first detox rehabilitation facility. And I realized, looking back, that was probably 10 years too late, because at this point, she was very, very well far down the road. And it was unfortunate that it took a DUI to finally get her into a rehab facility. So if you have family members and you think that they need help, get them help much sooner. Don't wait for them to have legal issues, because the problem happened long before that. In fact, most people who do drive, they've been driving drunk for 10 years before they actually get a DUI. So I hope that helps. I hope that makes sense. Again, I go live Monday through Friday right around 6 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And again, the Facebook group is called There's an Alcoholic in the Family. Link is in the bio. You can go right to the link. Takes you right to it. Sign up for it. And then when you're ready to work with me one-on-one, I have a coaching program. Takes about 45 minutes to an hour. Set up a breakthrough call. Again, link is in the bio. I've helped thousands of families, and I'm looking for people who are ready to change their lives and the lives of their family. And again, thanks for listening. Now, today I want to talk about my wife's second DUI, which is driving under the influence. Yesterday I talked about her first DUI. The second one, I could see it coming a little bit closer, because I realized that she was going down that path, and it wasn't such a big surprise. But unfortunately, this would have been about a year and a half after her first one, so we're talking around 2014, 2015, probably late 2015. And she went to a friend's house in Huntington Beach. So from where we live, it's about an hour and a half. And I really didn't want her to go down there. It was a get-together with some of her friends. I believe her friend's daughter was having a shower because she was getting married the following summer. And I knew that there would be wine and probably drinking, and I knew that was a very, very bad idea. Her friend also had an issue with it, but she wasn't. She didn't drink very much. On that, with that in mind, I was very concerned that she was driving an hour and a half on her own, because at this point, her license was still revoked, and she was driving around with it. You think, well, why would she do that? Well, you can't control somebody. That's what you don't understand. If you have an alcoholic in the family, you don't have any kind of control with that. You can take keys away and all kinds of things, but it's an impossible situation for families and spouses, especially if you've lived through that. So my wife went down to her friend's house about 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. She actually left before I got home, so when I got home, she was already gone, which made me a little bit nervous. I knew where she went. But I was glad that she was getting out of the house, because she was, home a lot, because she really wasn't allowed to drive a whole lot. So I knew this event wasn't going to go well. So she went down to her friend's house. It was around, I think, 10 or 11 o'clock, and I realized that it was getting late, and I hadn't heard from her. I called a couple times on her phone, never heard from her. I figured, well, maybe she's busy. So by 12 o'clock, I decided to call her friend. I mean, I know how parties go. They can last along. And I actually called her friend up to find out if she was still there. If she was, I said, well, why don't she just spend the night and come back Saturday morning? It would probably be a lot safer than driving at night. So I called her friend. It was probably around 11:30. It was pretty late to call, but her friend answered, and she said, Amanda left. She left like 8 o'clock. Isn't she home yet? And I just went, oh, no. This was 3.5, 4 hours later, and she should have been home hours ago, and she wasn't. And I asked her friend, was there drinking going on there? She goes, well, yeah, we had some wine. We had some friends over and stuff. So, you know her situation. Why did you let her go? I goes, well, I don't have any control over her. You know Amanda. You can't control her. And I was kind of pissed off. I go, well, why did you have her come down there? You know she's an alcoholic. Why did you have her come down there? Well, it's not my position. I going back and forth with a friend, and I realized it was a futile conversation. I said, well, I don't think this is going to end well, but I'll let you know what happens. So after I set the phone down with her friend, I mean, I realized, what had likely happened. And I left one more message on Amanda's phone, didn't pick up. I mean, this time it's probably 12:30, and I just went to bed. I said, there's nothing I can do. I'm not going to worry about this. This is just a ridiculous. I've been through this so many times, and if people don't understand that, you've just never lived this type of situation. If you spent your entire time looking for somebody or searching for somebody, they have to find their own rock bottom. And this, you would think that this was for her, but it wasn't. And what I discovered, she did get a DUI. In fact, she fell asleep on the freeway coming home. I mean, literally on the freeway, parked on the shoulder of a major freeway in Southern California. Cops found her, took her in, and it was just a mess. I mean, she called me again like 7:30 the next morning when she was able to get a phone call, and I had, she expected me to come drive an hour to come get her. And quite frankly, I waited a couple hours to go get her. I really wasn't in any hurry. It was a Saturday. I had some things to do. I'm not going to make it a priority, and you really shouldn't if you're a family member. And eventually I did go get her, and she was at a restaurant across the street, and she was already drinking a glass of wine in front of me, and I got very mad. I said, well, if you want to ride home, we're leaving right now. Pay your bill. I'm not going to sit here and watch you drink a glass of wine. And it was, I got it. It was really became a scene in the restaurant. I said, well, if you want to ride home, I'm leaving. So she did pay the bill, and we left. And it was a lot of angst. This was her second DUI, and what a lot of people don't realize, the implications for me as well as a spouse. I think the biggest problem I had was twofold. She was very defiant. It wasn't her fault. She just wanted to get out, and she got out, and she got caught again. I mean, there was no attitude of culpability or responsibility, and that really fried me. I think it would fry anybody. The other thing is, the following week, I had to go, get the car. She had a BMW X5. I had to go get that at the impound lot. I think that was about $800. And when I got to the car, there was 2 bottles of wine. One was opened, and one had spilled all over the front seat, which was fairly typical. There was also a dent in the side of the car because obviously she forgot to tell me that she hit the guardrail. And this is what you deal with on a regular basis. And that was her second DUI. And again, real quick, we have the Facebook group. The link is in the bio. It's called There's an Alcoholic in the Family. You can go to Facebook and find it, or just go to the link in my bio and just join. It's a very good peer group if you're an alcoholic or have a family member who is. You can get questions answered. Also, when you're ready to work with me one-on-one, I want to work with people who are ready to change their life and the lives of their family. Link is in the bio for a breakthrough call. It takes about 45 minutes or so. We do a deep dive into what's going on with you, go over the program. And again, thanks for listening. And now to continue the series of my late wife's 4 DUIs. The third DUI was definitely the most heartbreaking because it really betrayed every trust that we really had left. And after this, there really wasn't any anyways. But if you've heard the story, my wife drove through the front of our house at one point, and she actually smashed up her car, and I had my Mercedes was parked in the car, so both cars were in the shop. And as a result, I had to get a rental car. So I came home one night, and unfortunately, I left the keys on the counter, and she happened to steal the car. And she said she was going to get something real quick at the store, and unfortunately never saw her again until the following day. And actually, this was a real tragedy because what happened was she ended up going across the street to a local CVS store, bought 2 bottles of wine, and proceeded to drink them in the car. She ended up finishing off an entire bottle and half another one, and these are 1.75 liter bottles of wine. Unfortunately, she tried to back up. She almost hit some people. They called the police, and I had no idea any of this was going on. Initially, I realized that she was gone right around 7:30 or so. As I came downstairs, she was gone and the car was gone. I was absolutely in shock because both our cars were in the shop, and now she had taken the rental car, and I didn't know where she was. Again, hours passed. I had nobody to call. She wasn't answering her phone. A lot of people don't understand this. when you go around and round and round, it's just a horrible, terrifying place to be for a spouse or for a family member. By 12 o'clock, I had pretty much given up. I was just about ready to go to bed. And then I heard sirens in the distance. And I had just a sneaking suspicion. We lived in a neighborhood, and there was like a CVS on the corner, which is probably half a mile away. So at that time, I ran around the neighborhood, went over to the CVS, crossed a major road. And as I entered the parking lot, to make a long story short, my rental car was already on the back of a tow truck, ready to be hauled away. And I ran up to the tow truck driver, and let's continue this. Unfortunately, the tow truck driver said he had to take the car. The person who was driving it had already been arrested for a DUI. There was a police officer just kind of finishing his report. And then there were some people standing around, and they basically were telling us that, yes, that this person driving the car, which was my rental car, obviously my wife, had backed up. She was swerving all over the parking lot of the CVS, almost hit a couple people, and they actually called the police. The police came, and obviously she was inebriated because she'd been sitting there for several hours drinking wine. Unbelievable. It was an unbelievable stress on myself, and and obviously Amanda. But it was just past the point of really irrationality to steal the only car we had left just to go run and to get alcohol. And unfortunately, the next day, I wasn't even willing to pick her up at the jail. She called me at the jail, and I said, well, you're going to have to find your own way home. I don't have any way to pick you up. So, it's not my problem. You figure your own way from jail. She says, well, I'm really hungover. I'm like, well, maybe you shouldn't have stole the car, smashed the car, got a DUI, and got drunk. How about that? And you have to realize, the first and foremost, I tell these stories because these were years ago. And people think I'm being disparaging. I'm kind of tired of explaining this, but these are designed to help other families in this situation, and alcoholics specifically, to understand the destruction of their behavior and maybe to realize that they might not want to go down that path. That's what these videos are ultimately designed for. Also, the following day, I ended up getting an Uber, and I went to the lot where the vehicle was impounded, and I wanted to find out what was going on with it. I had to call the rental company. The rental company ended up just saying, we're going to get it, and I went to the car, and again, there was a big bottle of red wine, half full, dripping all over the front of the car. This is a brand new car. I think this car had less than 300 miles on it, and she had put a big dent in it. Again, she had ran into one of the grocery shopping sections, smashed it up. Brand new car. Rental car company wanted to sue me over it. I go, it wasn't me driving. My car was stolen. I mean, I literally could have, I could have probably put my wife. Looking back, I probably could have, put her in for stolen vehicle. In some ways, I probably should have. It might have helped the situation. Unfortunately, this was also our 21st wedding anniversary at the time, and I realized this would have been 2018. Crazy times. And again, I tell these stories to help other families to realize that you're not alone, and lots of people go through this horrible type of situation. And again, I go live Monday through Friday, generally right around 6 o'clock Pacific time, 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Also, we have the Facebook group, which link is in my bio. It's called There's an Alcoholic in the Family. You don't have to go to Facebook, just go to the link in my bio. Also, when you're ready to work with me one-on-one, I have a complete coaching program designed to help families and the alcoholic. I've helped thousands of alcoholics and their families. Set up a breakthrough call. It's a Zoom call. It takes about 45 minutes to an hour. We do a deep dive into what's going on with you and your family. And we set up a roadmap to really change your life and the life of your family. And again, thanks so much for listening. Today I want to continue the series of my wife's 4 DUIs. And unfortunately, the 4th DUI was not as dramatic as the 3rd DUI, but it was still another nail in the coffin. And unfortunately, she used to park up. We had a clubhouse about half mile from our house in our neighborhood, and she used to park up near that and drink wine when I was at work. And unfortunately, one day somebody saw her drinking wine in the parking lot, and they called the police. And luckily she wasn't driving, and they pulled up next to her, behind her, she said, and they checked her, because obviously she'd been drinking, and she was sitting behind the wheel of a car. Unfortunately, at that time, okay, she was driving an unregistered vehicle. I wouldn't pay for the registration. It was uninsured because she was uninsurable, and her driver's license at this point had been revoked because she already had 3 DUIs. I believe she may or may not have had warrants. But anyways, they arrested her and again impounded the car. And that was her 4th DUI, which unfortunately happened about 3 weeks after her 3rd DUI, which had been extremely dramatic. So I'm going to continue the conversation, what happened to her. And again, I tell these stories because I know it resonates with other families who have gone through this type of situation, either dealing with someone in their family who's an alcoholic or drug addiction or any kind of addiction. It also helps the alcoholic realize really the path of destruction and the effect that they have on their own families. It's very important for them to understand that. They may understand that, but accepting that, or a lot of alcoholics have survived this ordeal, and they really appreciate understanding the road that they didn't go down. And I know it helps a lot of people, and that's why I make these for a number of reasons. On that note, my wife, with her 4th DUI, the car was impounded once again. It cost $600-800 just to get the car out of impound, which really isn't the point of the video, but very, very taxing on families. And I will continue what happened to her court. Now, during her 1st and 2nd DUIs, she had actually had to serve 55 days, and then she was under house arrest for 6 months. And that had happened a couple of years before. Now, her 3rd and 4th DUI were so close together, she ended up actually getting a year of incarceration. Unfortunately, they only kept her in for 65 days. And I remember at the time of the sentencing, I actually asked her lawyers to please keep her in for a year, because at that point I really believed being incarcerated for an entire year might have been the only thing that could have saved her, because nothing else was. I mean, the rehabs weren't saving her, and she wasn't doing the work in AA or Smart Recovery meetings. I felt it was the only, her only chance really at escaping this. And I was very disappointed when they let her out after 65 days. Apparently there was overcrowding. And again, they put her on probation for the rest of the time, and she got 6 months under house arrest. Unfortunately, house arrest means you could leave for a period of time. You had to check in by 3 o'clock in the afternoon and be there till the following morning, which gave her ample time to go get all the alcohol that she needed, whatever how she could ever spin her web to get alcohol. And unfortunately, because she couldn't leave the house, it added it to her depression and her overall continued road to alcohol use disorder. And to be honest with you, I don't know if house arrest is necessarily the best thing for someone who is an alcoholic, because it just kind of adds to their isolation. And the last thing an alcoholic needs is further isolation. One thing I think positive that came out of it is that eventually they put her into a court-ordered outpatient facility where she had to go for 6 or 8 hours a day. And there was actually a lot of hope that would work. And again, that also didn't work as well, because there were some other extenuating circumstances where they had ended up having to take her off of house arrest because she wasn't checking in. There's another incident if you watch the video. On that note, again, I want to say, again, I go live Monday through Friday, right around 6 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Again, we have the Facebook group. It's called There's an Alcoholic in the Family. Link is in the bio. Very good group if you're an alcoholic or have a family member to get further clarification on what's going on with you. And then the coaching program, when you're ready to work with me one-on-one. I'm really looking for people and families who want to change their lives forever. Set up a breakthrough call. It takes about 45 minutes or so, and we do a deep dive into what's going on with you and your family. I've helped thousands of people, and really, it's about changing the world one family at a time. And again, thanks for listening.